Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's onboard story. This is from 2019. We had to start last and 48th in this race, and I wanted to show you some of the crazy maneuvers I had to do in my final stint to try and get us into first place in class. So we are exiting the pit lane here. I just got in the car. In front of me is a green Porsche of Klaus Bachler. That's the same car and the same driver that won in Monza earlier in the year in the Blancpain GT series, endurance series. As I exit the pits, I have a Silver Cup car, which is one of my competitors, just jump in front of us, which means I cannot go maximum attack on my outlap. I first have to figure a way past him. He's on warmer tires. Well, my tires aren't cold, but they've just come out of a heater. They've been sitting in the pit lane for maybe 30-40 seconds and aren't yet at ideal temperatures. So you'll see that flashing red light on the rearview mirror screen. That indicates that the left rear is still not quite up to temperature, or the pressures aren't there either. So here you just saw me there press the reset button. That's the fuel reset button. Every time we leave the pits we have to reset the fuel indicator so that we can give accurate readings to our engineer about fuel consumption throughout the stint. Stuck behind this guy here, we had a lot of good pace in practice, and probably should have done a little bit better in qualifying, but we had two big issues which resulted in us not doing qualifying 1 and qualifying 2, and because in this series the grid is determined by average lap times, we did have to start stone last. My teammate Rinat Salikov did an amazing job to avoid the major accident at the beginning of the race, and Dennis Bulatov also did an awesome job. So by the time I got into the car we were P19 or P20, and I think 8th in class. So I just got through on the Silver Cup car, and there's a big group of cars in front of me which I believe I can catch. I just needed to wait for the tires to come in, and then we could really sort of get on the pace and start to push. The outlap is usually, you have a choice. You can really maximize the outlap and push hard, but then you're going to pay for that at the end of the stint. So it's always a difficult balance, and this is a lot of what racing drivers mean when they say we're trying to understand the tires. So we're just going to skip ahead a little bit. I'm still chasing down the green Ferrari. I'm in a green Ferrari. I'm chasing down the green Porsche of Klaus Bachler. This guy's a really super fast driver, also race winner in GT Masters, obviously won at Monza, so a lot of respect for him. But we do have pretty good pace. There's actually a Ferrari out front that's leading in the S&P, or fighting for the lead, with Davide Rigon behind the wheel, and I could see him on one of the big TV screens into the final corner. So I was using that TV screen as a reference to how much time I was gaining or losing against the overall leaders. But for now the main focus is definitely on just gaining as many positions as possible. Even though we started last, we had a target of finishing 5th in class. That was sort of our dream position. I do take here, you can see a little bit of a different line to Klaus. I was also taking a different line compared to my teammates through there, but it seemed to help me. Some of you may have seen the onboard video I did last year from Silverstone in the GT Open. That was on a Michelin tire. In this series we use Perel tires. And I did a lot of crazy overtaking maneuvers there, so I was kind of leaning on that experience that I had to try and get through the field in this race. Through the slip, when I'm in the slipstream I experience quite a bit of understeer in the 48. It's very front, it relies a lot on the front splitter, and if we get too close to a car in front we can experience quite a bit of understeer. Going here through Maggots, Beckett and Chapel, honestly incredible series of corners, and taught me a lot about timing and what timing means in racing, and in my opinion, now that I understand it more, I think that is the most important element of why drivers are fast. It's not that they have a good sense of feeling so much, it's more about their sense of timing, and if you have good sense of timing then you can be fast. I learned this track in 2016. The first time I drove it was in 2016, and I learned it purely on Gran Turismo. I can't remember if it was GT5 or GT6. I think it was GT6 on PlayStation 3, and I would wake up at 5 AM every morning before work and put in 2 hours, and then go to work and then do the same thing the next morning. And I really learned that the track accuracy in Gran Turismo specifically was so good that when I arrived in real life I was using the reference points from the game for braking and stuff. boom, down the inside here of Klaus. I think that's turn 11. The Ferrari around here was pretty good in the slow speed corners. It wasn't necessarily on the initial braking. It was the second phase of the entry where we found a lot of, well, where we were faster. And I was using that to my advantage there. So the previous time I overtook the Lamborghini into 10, diving down the inside of the right-hander, but Klaus left a small gap into 11, and I just took my chance. You could say I'm in a bit of a rush because I believe that a top 5 position was possible in this race in our class. So I don't have position indicators for these videos because there are a couple of retirements and I don't know when they happen. Obviously I'm in the car, and even during the race, if you watch it live, it's not clear when the guys are retiring, and I don't have a lap chart. So you're just gonna have to enjoy the moves themselves, some of the laps that I do here, and we can go from there. Chasing down our Motorsport Aston Martin. Last year this was a 100% factory team, but this year they have, I believe, some paid drivers, which is not uncommon. Most of the field is filled with young guys who have a sponsor and are paying their way to try and become professional. And you know, you could say I was one of those guys, but I was an amateur driver. I was a gentleman, having fun with the dream, and then sort of somehow managed to make that dream a reality. But I would like to again remind you that a lot of my speed that I have today, I'm not one of the fastest, there's no question. I'm definitely not one of the fastest, but I've managed to get closer because of sim racing. And one of the clearest indications to me of the benefits of sim racing was practicing this track in Gran Turismo 5 or 6, I think it was 6, and then using the exact same braking and reference points and lines when I arrived there in real life, and was one of the faster guys out of the box. Okay, getting closer to the Aston now, starting to really think, okay, we have real pace here, and I have the benefit of already having overtaken 2 cars. I've explained in previous videos that getting those first couple of overtakes out the way really gives you a little bit of confidence that you can make moves and you won't get stuck behind drivers. That is highly probable. It happens a lot at Budapest. You can get stuck behind a driver for the entire race who's up to 3 seconds a lap slower than you, and you just will not be able to catch them or get a move done. But completing this lap now, we're going to skip ahead a bit because we slowly do catch the Aston, but I want to move relatively quickly. The stint was 50-ish minutes long, but I've cut it down to about 20 minutes. So as you can see here, we're now right under the rear wing almost of the Aston. I forgot who was driving this car. You'll see quite a lot of understeer there, but the rules in Blancpain dictate that the green area outside of the track is fair game in turn 1 and turn 7. Oh, sorry, turn 9. I don't know. I forgot the corner numbers now. Magus Becker's Chapel. I was average through here. I wasn't exactly catching a lot. My priority though was getting good exit and smooth as minimizing as many bumps and stuff as possible on the exit to get a smooth acceleration and stick in the slipstream going down to turn 7. So braking into 7. Here on the entry I was pretty decent. He made a small mistake there. I think he was struggling actually with front end grip, and I think about a move here and go for the inside line. He brakes 10 meters earlier than usual, but again our advantage was the second phase of the entry. We seemed to roll more speed through the corner, and that move there was sort of instinctual, but it gave me an idea for the next time I caught a driver. Maybe I could go for that move again. Coming from quite far back, these guys are professionals, so we always check, at least have one check in our mirror before going into a corner, and luckily for me these guys are super respectful and gave me the space. Just in front of me there is Mirko Bortolotti. He's caught the Nissan, sorry, not the Nissan, I always get this wrong, the Honda NSX. The Honda NSX in this series is not the fastest in the corners, but they make up for it with the balance of performance by insane top speed. So to overtake them is actually very difficult, and I was hoping that the Nissan, the Honda, I do it every time, the Honda would slow down Bortolotti long enough that I could catch both of them and sort of use Bortolotti as my passage through to the NSX. Okay, we're going to skip ahead again a little bit here. just because it takes a few laps to catch the guys in front. Okay, so even though now the gap is quite big, it's just crazy how in racing things can unfold where suddenly you, from going, you know, half a straight behind to right up their gearbox because of the action that's unfolding in front of you. So trying my best to sort of catch up. I can see that things are sort of unfolding. Bortolotti does an amazing move. He gets 2 cars in one corner here, and then he gets the back marker as well. It's actually this golden Lamborghini that we're going to catch now that created this sort of little mini chaos and allowed me to catch up so quickly. The Honda is from our class, so it is for track position and class position rather, and I believe that the Lamborghini in front of him is also a Silver Cup car. So if I could get these 2 guys, a top 5 starts to really sound and feel quite real. What I didn't realize though was that the top 3 guys were in a group together. I knew that one of the ASP Mercedes cars was in our class, and I could see him, but I didn't realize that directly in front of him was 2nd and 3rd in class. So I was hungry for that podium, but didn't quite realize how close I was to a possible win, hence the name Last to First Challenge. So here we go, through Maggots Beckett's, keeping up with the Honda, David, it's the Honda, not the Nissan. Losing a little bit there on the exit, but you'll see here he has the assistance of a slipstream and has slightly better acceleration, so going down the straight he pulls maybe 2 or 3 car lengths on me, which I now have to try and make up in the final sector of the lap. So going into 7, closing up quite a bit, getting good apex, but so did he, getting on the power nicely, maximizing on the exit, and then just thinking about the chicane. Maybe there's a move there later in the lap, but I really need to get much closer. You can see here that in the second phase of the corner I catch up quite a lot. Big thanks to Ferrari and Rinaldi Racing for an amazing setup. Big understeer on the exit there. Again, probably should have lifted, but you know, we're hungry. Hungry racing drivers always going to push the limits. Going through, I think that's Abbey. Such a fun corner, and the first time you go through there, you just cannot believe the bumps on this track, even though it was resurfaced last year. Okay, I'll just keep quiet until we get to the next lap, so you can just have a listen to the car, and yeah, we'll catch it, we'll pick it up from there. So as you could see there, I caught up quite a bit going through Maggots Beckett's, but he still pulled away quite considerably on the straight. However, when we go into turn 7, he makes a small mistake, misses the apex, runs a little bit wide, and I was able to carry significant more speed, which allows me to catch up. And then I go for the mother of all moves. This is the banzai of banzais. I just figure I'm going to send it. Luckily for me, he was aware that I was going for the inside, and I did 100% full-on Daniel Ricciardo special over there, and luckily it came off. That could have gone either way, but sometimes I suppose a little bit of intuition, a little bit of taking a risk, and just I knew that if I could get in front of him I would lose a lot less time as I tried to catch the next guy. So the field in front of me is actually starting to bunch up because we're approaching just over halfway in the race stint, and now different variables start to come into play, like who's looked after their tires best, who pushed at the beginning but is sacrificing tire wear and pace at the end, and this is where things start to shift around. It's not really to do with driver fitness though, because honestly these cars aren't that hard to drive in an hour stint. It's more like in the double stints in a 24-hour race where you start to feel it. But here it's more about tires and how your car is behaving. And none of us have tested these cars for this long in practice. So it's always a sort of new discovery. The two drivers who drive before you give feedback around halfway about tire condition, and the engineers make small adjustments to tire pressures. But overall, it's still, for the driver yourself, it's a new discovery. This is all new for us at this point in the race. So skipping ahead again, and now I'm behind another Silver Cup Lamborghini. I think that this guy was leading at one point in the race, or this car at least. I know they had a very good qualifying. So I think this is now for P5. So this is the target, at least. We've got 3 cars in front of us. We've got the Lamborghini Silver Cup car, and then in front of him is can't remember his name. He's going to be a factory driver for Bentley into the Spa 24 Hours, so he's pretty handy behind the wheel. And I think it's something Morris. Anyway, and then in front of them was a backmarker, and then a whole bunch of cars. So we still got Bortolotti, who's one of the best GT drivers in the world. He's sort of still in sight. Watching the TV cameras, I could see that the overall leaders hadn't exactly pulled away either, so my pace was pretty decent. And I'm just hoping that between the pros and the Silver Cup cars ahead of me, they can fight enough that I get another shot at catching up and possibly going for P4 or a podium. I actually think this is for P4. This is probably for 4th in class. Okay, so down in the slipstream now. Not much to be found there in terms of lap time. Just trying to think about where am I going to get this next move done. This inside line here is a possibility, but you probably need to be a little bit closer, and there's a car so close to the Lamborghini in front of him that he's not going to be looking in his mirrors to see if I'm making a move. So that would be a high risk proposition. I knew that I had some pace into these final 2 corners, sort of taking a slightly different line to everyone else, turning in a little bit earlier to try and find the curb to help with car rotation, and then squaring off this final right-hander down the inside. This is an option, but you see I get a little bit of oversteer on the power, and that option sort of falls away from me. So now back in the slipstream, starting a new lap, really thinking to myself, maybe I can do it again at the chicane where I got the Aston Martin and the Honda. Going into turn 1, again, big understeer, but I kind of held this one better. I anticipated it maybe a little bit better than the last time. And yeah, we head into Beckett's Chapel. Honestly, when you first go through here, it's just so fun. You have to manage the bumps. It's not smooth like a marble surface. Luckily here, the Bentley is being slowed down. I can't tell if it was a back marker or if it was for position. Either way, it's bringing them closer to me, and I'm looking forward to taking a bite at this cherry. So going around the outside here, thinking about it, I suppose, oh yes, okay, so this was a back marker, and you'll see here I make a small mistake. I actually bumped the Lamborghini in front of me. This was not intentional. I wasn't meant to overtake him here or anything, just boom, right there. He was just ran a little bit wide, and I was carrying a bit too much speed at the apex, and I misjudged that one. So minus 1 point to me. If this was Gran Turismo, probably get a 5-second penalty that I'd have to serve on a straight somewhere, but it wasn't intentional, so sorry Mr. Lamborghini driver. Nonetheless, I've realized that into that corner I do carry a little bit more speed in the second phase of the chicane, so there is an option there. Diving now to the inside, he left the door so wide open because he was trying to set up for a good exit that I thought to myself, there's no ways I can let that gap go unpunished. And luckily again for me, he leaves me the space, he reacts accordingly, and I managed to get through and fight for the next position. This Lexus in front of us is an AM car. We're lapping him. It's driven by the goalkeeper Fabien Barthez from France. He was pretty famous in his time, and when I saw him I was a little bit starstruck at the pit, in the pit lane, so that was pretty cool. Okay, now through there he gave me a lot of space, didn't slow me down much, and now we're on to the Bentley. So these Bentleys are really difficult to overtake. It's not often that they actually can see you. They sit on the other side of the car, they sit on the right side, so you always have to make sure that you remember that and position your car in the right way, that you know that they can see you. He goes now to the inside to overtake the back marker, runs wide, which means I get the move done around the outside, leading onto the back straight. So it wasn't much of a battle, and that was a massive relief. Yeah, slipstreaming past the AM car. I didn't quite know if he could see me, so I just moved slightly to the right, just to make sure, hey buddy, I'm on your outside, don't try and bomb on the inside there. Through into turn 7, move is done very smoothly, without any dramas, luckily, and we're on our way. And now you can see, if you look carefully in front, this is the top 10 fight, and all cars are super close to each other. So now I couldn't quite hear my engineer. He was giving me updates on the back straight every time, just what our position was, what our pace was, and but I couldn't quite hear him. I couldn't hear if we were P7 or P5, but what he was telling me was actually we were P4 and we were catching the overall leaders. Now in this group I could only see the third place car in Silver Cup, so I truly had no idea that I was chasing down the leaders of our class. But nonetheless, it wasn't like I was trying to drive slowly or anything. I was still pushing like crazy. Even if I knew that our class leaders were in front of us, it wouldn't have made it much easier for me to catch them, because I was already pretty close to the limit of what lap times I could do. I mean, the tires now were going away a little bit, and I was hoping to do 202s with free air, but that wasn't quite what I was able to do. I was sort of stuck in the low 203s, but the guys in front of me were doing 203.5s. However, the overall leaders were going even quicker than that. So we're just going to skip ahead again. We're now going into the final move of the race. I've caught now the factory Bentleys. It just shows you how strong the Ferraris were this weekend. We probably had a good balance of performance, but saying that, we also had a pretty good performance in Paul Ricard. So I'm hoping that we found something in terms of pace in the setup of our cars. Rinaldi Racing, the team I race for, we've all been doing a lot of work on setup this year, tried a lot of different things, and I think we've gotten to a point now where we're more consistently closer to the overall guys. In terms of driving, I could definitely still improve quite a lot, but the setup itself is definitely pretty good. Okay, so final move of the race. In the end, we couldn't quite catch the podium guys. This is the final 2 laps. I'm just going to show you this move here, and we just kind of ran out of time. I think if we had a better qualifying, then for sure we could have done a much better job here and possibly got into the podium. But in the end, last to first was a bit of a fail. In the end, we came from 48th on the grid to 13th overall and 4th in class, just missing out on the podium by 3 seconds. Following the Bentley now, as I mentioned before, super hard to overtake these guys. I'd followed him already for sort of 2 laps. Gauge where I was quicker, and into this right-hander I knew that I could go for a move. If I dived deep to the inside and sort of tippy-toed at the apex, he would see me. He is driver's right in terms of seat position, so he would see me quite easily. I get the move done. The driver of that car was really not impressed with me at the end of the race, so apologies. I did come from quite far back, but I was doing that the whole race, and all the drivers showed me a lot of respect and gave me the necessary room. So there you go. There's the race from Silverstone that you all wanted to see. Thank you so much for watching. This is one of my favorite stints. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one.